Welcome to the week 2 lecture looking at how Native American cultures existed in what became the United States prior to European contact and what the earliest colonization looked like in North America. Before European contact, North America was home to diverse Native American cultures, each of which adapted to its unique environment. These cultures were characterized by sophisticated social structures, trade networks, religious practices, and economic systems. Agriculture, mainly maize cultivation or corn, played a crucial role in the development and stabilities of these societies. Around 2000 BCE, Native American societies had begun to domesticate crops, leading to an agricultural revolution. The most significant crop was maize, what became corn, and originally was domesticated in Central America. Maize became the foundation of many Native American diets, providing a reliable food source that supported population growth and the development of these complex societies. The cultivation of maize also led to more permanent settlements and the emergence of larger, more centralized communities as seen in the Southwest and Midwest regions. In the Southwest, the ancestral Pueblos, often referred to as the Anasazis, lived in the Four Corners region, where modern-day Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah meet. The Anasazi developed advanced irrigation techniques to farm in the arid Southwest. They grew maize, beans, and squash, which is known as the Three Sisters of agriculture. The Anasazi were known for their cliff dwellings and large multi-story pueblos. Chaco Canyon was a significant center of Anasazi culture with massive stone buildings and a network of roads. The Anasazi had a complex society with intricate trade networks, religious practices centered around kivas, which were ceremonial structures, and advanced astronomical knowledge. The Mississippian culture, with Cahokia as its largest city, thrived in the Mississippi River Valley near present-day St. Louis, Missouri. The Mississippians were known for constructing large earthen mounds, which served as platforms for temples, residences, and burial sites. Cahokia's Monk's Mound is the largest prehistoric earthwork in North America. The Mississippians relied heavily on maize agriculture as well, which supported large populations and complex social hierarchies. They also engaged in long-distance trade, exchanging goods like copper, shells, and pottery across vast regions. Cahokia was a major urban center with an estimated population of 10 to 12,000 people at its peak. It featured a sophisticated societal structure with a ruling elite, specialized artisans, and religious leaders. Both the Anasazi and Mississippians adapted to their environments by developing innovative agricultural techniques. The Anasazi focused on irrigation in the arid Southwest, while the Mississippians built around fertile floodplains. The success of agriculture allowed these cultures to support large populations, leading to complex social hierarchies and the development of religious and political structures. These cultures left behind significant archaeological remains, such as the cliff dwellings of the Anasazi and the mounds of Cahokia, providing insight into their advanced societies. The Native American cultures of North America were highly diverse and sophisticated before European contact. The development of agriculture, particularly maize, was central to these successes. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas in the late 15th and early 16th centuries initiated a series of profound and often devastating changes for Native American societies. Contact led to the widespread destruction of indigenous cultures, fueled by misunderstandings, violence, and exploitation, as well as by the introduction of deadly diseases. The first contacts between Europeans and Native Americans were marked by significant cultural misunderstandings. Europeans often viewed Native societies through a lens of superiority, seeing them as primitive or savage. Europeans, particularly the Spanish, saw Native religions as heathen and sought to convert Native populations to Christianity, often through force. Native Americans, in turn, struggled to understand European intentions and beliefs, which led to conflict and resistance. Europeans also misunderstood Native concepts of land use and ownership, which led to the seizure of vast territories. Natives typically saw land as communal, while Europeans pursued individual land ownership, which fueled tension between the two groups. Early European expeditions, such as those led by Columbus, were often marked by violent encounters. Conquistadors used superior weaponry and military tactics to subdue native populations, often brutally. The Spanish and other European powers enslaved native populations or forced them into labor. Many native societies were displaced from their lands, which led to the collapse of traditional social structures. European colonization often involved the deliberate destruction of native cultures. Languages, religious practices, and traditions were often suppressed or eradicated in favor of European customs. Spanish conquistadors, such as those like Hernando Cortés and Francisco Pizarro, led expeditions that toppled powerful native empires. Cortés conquered the Aztec Empire in 1521, and Pizarro defeated the Inca Empire in 1533. The Spanish were driven by a combination of the three G's: God, gold, and glory. They sought to convert native peoples to Christianity, acquire wealth through plunder and exploitation, and gain personal and national prestige. Following their conquests, the Spanish established a vast colonial empire in the Americas, stretching from the Caribbean to South America. They imposed European governments, religion, and economic systems on the native populations. One such system was the encomienda system, which was a labor system that was established by the Spanish crown. It granted Spanish colonists, which were known as encomenderos, the right to demand labor or tribute from native communities in exchange for supposed protection and Christian instruction. In practice, the encomienda system was highly exploitative. Native Americans were forced to work under brutal conditions, often in mines or on plantations. The system led to widespread abuse and significant population decline. The abuses of the encomienda system were criticized by figures like Bartolomé de las Casas, who advocated for native rights. In response, the Spanish crown introduced reforms, but exploitation persisted in various reforms. European contact also brought diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza to the Americas, to which native populations had no immunity. Disease spread rapidly through native communities, causing mortality rates of 50 to 90% in some areas. Entire villages and societies were wiped out, weakening native resistance to European conquest and colonization. This massive loss of life led to the collapse of many native societies. Traditional leadership structures, religious practices, and cultural knowledges were disrupted or lost entirely. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas had catastrophic consequences for native populations. The combination of military conquest, cultural suppression, exploitation through the encomienda system, and the spread of deadly diseases led to the destruction of indigenous societies. These encounters reshaped the Americas, laying the foundations for European colonial empires, but at an immense cost to Native American cultures and peoples. The Spanish conquest of the Americas in the 15th and 16th centuries was driven by a combination of political, economic, and religious motivations. These motivations are often summarized by the three G's: gold, God, and glory. Each of these factors played a crucial role in shaping Spanish colonial policy and the actions of conquistadors. The pursuit of gold and other precious metals was a primary driver of Spanish exploration and conquest. The Spanish crown and the individual conquistadors who came to the New World sought to amass wealth by exploiting the resources of the New World. Early encounters, such as the conquest of the Aztec and Inca empires, revealed vast stores of gold and silver, fueling further expeditions. The Spanish forcibly seized these riches, often through brutal means. Once the initial plundering subsided, the Spanish established extensive mining operations, particularly in regions like Potosi, which is in modern-day Bolivia. Native populations were often forced into labor under harsh conditions in these mines. The influx of gold and silver from the Americas had a profound impact on the European economy, contributing to the rise of a global trade network and enhancing Spain's power and influence worldwide. The Spanish also saw themselves as carrying out a divine mission to convert the indigenous peoples of the Americas to Christianity, specifically to Catholicism. This was framed as a moral duty to save native souls. The Catholic Church played a central role in the colonization process. Missionaries, including the Franciscans, Dominicans, and Jesuits, established missions across the Americas to evangelize native populations. Conversions were often coerced, with native religious practices being suppressed or blended with Catholic traditions. The Spanish imposed European religious practices, leading to the destruction of many indigenous beliefs and customs. The Spanish used religion as a justification for their conquests, portraying themselves as bringing civilization and salvation to heathen peoples. This mindset contributed to the harsh treatment of native populations. The Spanish monarchy sought to expand its empire and enhance its global prestige. Conquest of the New World offered an opportunity to extend Spanish influence and power across vast territories. Spain was in fierce competition with other European powers, such as Portugal, England, and France, for dominance in the New World. Successful conquest boosted Spain's standing in Europe and secured valuable resources. Many conquistadors were motivated by the promise of personal fame and fortune. Success in the New World could lead to titles, land grants, and wealth, elevating their status within Spanish society. The Spanish crown played a direct role in the conquests, granting charters to explorers and conquistadors. The monarchy benefited from the expansion through increased revenues and territorial control, reinforcing its political power. The Columbian Exchange refers to the widespread transfer of plants, animals, culture, human populations, technology, and diseases between the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia following Christopher Columbus's voyages to the New World in 1492. This exchange had profound and lasting effects on the ecology, agriculture, and biology of both the Old World, Europe, Africa, and Asia, and the New World, the Americas. European colonists introduced a variety of Old World crops to the Americas, including wheat, barley, rice, sugarcane, coffee, and citrus fruits. Livestock such as horses, cattle, pigs, sheep, and goats were also brought to the New World, transforming agriculture and transportation in the Americas. The horse, in particular, revolutionized Native American life, especially on the Great Plains, where it became central to hunting, warfare, and mobility. The introduction of new crops and animals altered the American landscape, leading to changes in land use, deforestation, and the disruption of indigenous ecosystems. European farming techniques, combined with the new plants and animals, sometimes led to soil depletion and erosion, affecting the sustainability of agriculture. The Americas contributed several important crops to Europe, Asia, and Africa, including maize, potatoes, tomatoes, peanuts, peppers, and tobacco. The potato, in particular, became a staple in many European countries, significantly boosting food security and population growth. For example, it played a key role in the population boom in Ireland and other parts of Europe. Maize became an essential crop in parts of Africa and China, further increasing food production and supporting population growth. The introduction of New World crops led to dietary diversification and improved nutrition in Europe and beyond. This in turn supported large populations and urbanization. The cultivation of cash crops like sugar and tobacco in the New World fueled the development of the transatlantic slave trade, which had significant economic and social impacts on Africa, Europe, and the Americas. The most devastating aspect of the Columbian Exchange was the introduction of Old World diseases to the Americas, including smallpox, measles, influenza, and typhus. Native American populations, as mentioned before, had no immunity to these diseases, leading to catastrophic mortality rates. It is estimated that up to 90% of the indigenous population in some regions died as a result of these diseases. As stated before, the massive population decline led to the collapse of many native societies, weakening resistance to European colonization and paving the way for European dominance in the Americas. While the Old World was largely spared from devastating new diseases, the introduction of syphilis, which is believed to have originated in the Americas, had significant social and medical impacts in Europe. The Columbian Exchange facilitated the rise of global trade networks, linking the economies of Europe, the Americas, Africa, and Asia in unprecedented ways. The influx of silver from the Americas, particularly from mines in Mexico and Peru, fueled European economic growth and contributed to the rise of capitalism and the modern global economy. The Columbian Exchange also led to significant cultural exchanges, including the spread of European languages, religions, and technologies to the Americas. The forced migration of Africans to the Americas through the transatlantic slave trade created new cultural and demographic patterns, particularly in the Caribbean, Brazil, and the southern United States. The introduction of invasive species, such as rats and weeds, had lasting ecological consequences, often displacing native species and altering local environments. In the 17th century, the French and Dutch established colonies in North America with distinct goals, economic systems, and approaches to Native American relations. Unlike the Spanish and English, whose colonies often focused on agriculture and large-scale settlement, the French and Dutch empires were primarily driven by trade, especially the fur trade. Both empires developed complex relationships with indigenous populations, often based on alliances and trade rather than conquest and settlement. The French established their North American presence primarily in Canada, the Great Lakes region, the Mississippi River Valley, and the Caribbean. Key settlements included Quebec and Montreal, which served as major hubs for the fur trade. The fur trade was the economic backbone of New France, with beaver pelts in high demand in Europe for hat making. French settlers, known as coureurs de bois, which translates to runners of the woods, ventured deep into the interior to trade with Native American tribes. This required small, mobile settlements rather than large permanent colonies. The French also engaged in fishing and logging, but did not establish large-scale agricultural settlements as seen in English or Spanish colonies. The French generally maintained cooperative relations with Native Americans, especially compared to other European powers. This was driven by their reliance on native knowledge and networks for the fur trade. Alliances with tribes like the Huron, Algonquin, Montagnais were essential for French success. In return for furs, the French provided European goods, such as metal tools, weapons, and textiles. The French engaged in missionary work through Jesuit priests who lived among the native populations to convert them to Christianity. However, the French did not attempt to impose European cultural norms as aggressively as the Spanish. The Dutch established the colony of New Netherland along the Hudson River with its capital at New Amsterdam, which is modern-day New York City, founded in 1625. Dutch settlements also included parts of present-day New Jersey, Delaware, and Connecticut. Like the French, the Dutch were primarily interested in trade rather than extensive agricultural settlements. Fort Orange, which is modern-day Albany, New York, was a key trading hub for furs. The Dutch were also involved in the Atlantic trade, including the slave trade, and their economy was diversified with agriculture, shipbuilding, and commerce. The Dutch maintained relatively peaceful relations with Native American tribes, focusing on trade partnerships rather than conquest. They traded with the Iroquois Confederacy and the Mohicans, providing them with European goods, particularly firearms, in exchange for furs. However, the Dutch were more concerned with profit than diplomacy, and tensions occasionally rose, leading to conflicts like Kieft's War with the Lenape. Both the French and Dutch empires prioritized trade, especially in furs, over agriculture and large-scale colonization. Their economic strategies required maintaining good relations with native populations, leading to a different approach than the more aggressive land-seizing methods of the Spanish and English. The French and Dutch generally treated indigenous peoples as trade partners rather than subjects to be conquered. Their alliances and trade relationships were key to their colonial strategies, and for the French would be highly advantageous in the future. The French were more involved in cultural and religious exchange, with Jesuit missions aiming to convert Native Americans, while the Dutch were primarily focused on economic gains. Despite crossing the Atlantic around the same time in the early 17th century, the English established radically different societies in the Chesapeake, the West Indies, and New England. These differences arose due to varying motivations for colonization, the distinct type of settlers who migrated, and the impact of regional climates on economic development. In the Chesapeake region, the primary motivation for settlers, and this is the area of Virginia and Maryland, was economic gain. The search for wealth, particularly through the cultivation of cash crops, drove colonization. The Virginia Company, a joint stock company, sought profits from gold, resources, and eventually tobacco cultivation. The Chesapeake attracted mainly single young men, many of whom were indentured servants seeking economic opportunities. Fewer families or religious groups settled here compared to New England. The region developed a stratified society with wealthy planters at the top and a large population of poor laborers, including enslaved Africans, by the late 17th century. The warm, humid climate and fertile soil of the Chesapeake were ideal for tobacco cultivation, which became the region's dominant cash crop. Tobacco required extensive land and labor, leading to the expansion of plantations and the importation of indentured servants and later enslaved Africans. The plantation economy fostered a rural society with few towns, a focus on cash crops, and significant economic inequality. The primary motivation in the West Indies, including islands like Barbados and Jamaica, was the pursuit of profits through sugar production. The high demand for sugar in Europe made it a lucrative cash crop. Colonists sought quick wealth from the plantation economy, which was highly profitable, but it also required extensive labor. Early settlers in the West Indies included English planters seeking economic opportunities, along with large numbers of enslaved Africans brought to work on their sugar plantations. The society became heavily stratified, with a small wealthy planter class and a large enslaved African population. White indentured servants were initially common, but were very quickly replaced by African slaves. The tropical climate of the West Indies was well suited to sugarcane cultivation, which dominated the region's economy. The labor-intensive nature of sugar production led to the development of large plantations, creating a society deeply dependent on enslaved labor. The focus on monoculture, which is specifically focusing on sugar cultivation, and the harsh working conditions for enslaved people made the West Indies one of the most economically profitable but socially unequal regions. Unlike the Chesapeake and West Indies, New England was settled primarily for religious reasons. Puritans and Pilgrims sought to establish communities based on their religious beliefs, free from persecution in England. Economic motivations were secondary, with many settlers seeking a stable communal life centered around religious values. New England attracted families, religious groups, and skilled craftsmen. The society was more balanced in terms of gender and age compared to the Chesapeake, fostering a strong sense of community. The settlers were generally middle class, with a higher literacy rate and a focus on education, leading to the early establishment of schools and colleges. The colder climate and rocky soil of New England were not conducive to large-scale agriculture, leading to a diverse economy based on small farms, fishing, shipbuilding, and trade. The region's economy was more diversified and less dependent on cash crops, with a focus on subsistence farming and local markets. The communal, religious-based society promoted the development of towns and a close-knit social structure with a greater emphasis on civic responsibility and democratic governance.